Hello, everyone. Whoa, are we recording here, Alex? I don't see a record button on my end. I hope we're recording. I don't see anything
I think we're
happening.
good. Yeah, you're showing
Oh,
up on
there
YouTube.
we go. All right. Every day is an adventure with YouTube. So anyway, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the RationalInvestor.co's daily brief. Actually, we've got a full crew here this morning, so it's a little bit surprising that lounge is a little bit vacant this morning. But nonetheless, I did notice last night that the participation in the lounge is actually getting pretty quiet here, and it's kind of interesting. Really, I might argue that to actually put a bottom into the market, we have to get all the sort of public not interested in this. And judging by what I'm seeing on the site, interest, especially the looky loos, a lot of that's gone. I thought it was really interesting that I'm seeing. I know this guy, he's sort of called bottoms before and it didn't quite work out, but he's back at it, calling a bottom in the cryptocurrency market. I don't know. It'd be interesting to tell. Yeah, I get the kind of feeling that maybe that is the case because number one, like I said, sentiment is so bad right now. And I'm seeing a whole bunch of funny little anecdotes that are actually suggesting that we're probably close to some sort of pivot. And I thought it was interesting. Alex, you're in the house this morning driving the bus. Are you here? Someone
Yeah.
on CNBC to short. Yeah. And Alex, actually, just before the daily brief, he showed me this correlation chart of the euro and Bitcoin. And I've been sort of squawking a little bit recently about how, yesterday's daily brief, I was talking a little bit about how, Drahi now is actually talking about no longer are the banks the major risk and, liquidity and solvency. Now he's talking about like international tariffs and trade is the big worry for them right now. So I wonder if the euro is trying to turn the corner. We're actually really fortunate this morning. We've got Mr. Bear in the house. So I can't wait to hear what's on his mind. We listened to probably about an hour or so of Brian's rants yesterday. Today we get to listen to the Bear. How you doing, Mr. Bear? Bear's got a blank screen, and is he here? Oh, I hear something.
Can you hear me?
There he is, Mr. Bear. How you doing this morning?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. How are you, Mr. Brian? I just combined your name, Brimish.
All right. Well, I'm always better whenever I get to see you, so that's always a bonus. And of course, we've got Alex driving the bus. Every time I turn on these YouTube hangouts and I hear Alex's voice, it always puts a smile on my face. Got a couple veterans here in the lounge this morning. Haven't seen in a while, so I'm pleased to see guys like Da Vinci. Hey, Da Vinci, how you doing this morning? Want to give a big shout out to our community?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there he is. Oh, very calm. All right. Did you go Tesla shopping? Anyway,
Yeah, I'm not getting one.
no, he decided not to. All right, fair enough. We got Shane. Shane's converting a delivery truck into his cabin of his dreams on wheels. So really always excited to see that. Got James in the house. Geez, we got a whole bunch of cool veterans here today. Kevin's here, as always. Bugra says I should be Mr. Bull. And actually, I like the long side of the market, so maybe I should. So, banter aside, great to see Mr. Bear in the house, and I can't wait to hear what's on his mind. So, where do you want to take us today, Mr. Bear? Where should we start?
I guess we'll start with some market watch headlines. It's interesting that this is a headline here again, is that Canadians who invest in marijuana stocks might be banned. So I'm wondering if this is just them going off of that old story that Brian and I have been talking about, where that millionaire or billionaire investor got a lifetime ban from coming into the US for investing here. But it looks like there's a new statement from a Border Patrol spokesman that's saying that any arriving alien who is determined to be a drug abuser or addict, or who is convicted of, admits having committed, or admits committing acts which constitute essential elements of a violation, blah, 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 would be denied entry into the US. So I think this is like a broad classification here. And I'm just wondering if this is something that's kind of passed down from Jeff Sessions. It's just like, hey, you know, as we don't want these guys coming in here, and they're kind of making this more obvious to the public, at least from a Canadian standpoint, that if you are coming in here and you're on a list and you're not to be coming into the United States, they're going to ask you questions like, are you invested in marijuana stocks, and kind of keep you from coming in. So it's interesting to see that this is in the headlines again. I probably wouldn't worry if you're just kind of like the casual investor that owns a couple hundred, maybe a couple $1,000s worth of this stuff. I doubt they would ask you that question coming into the country. But, you know, if you are a bigger investor and you're kind of on the radar, I'd be a little bit worried about something like this. But make sure, you know.
Well, it's really weird here for like the west coast of North America, because technically marijuana is going to be legal in October here in BC, and it's already legal in Washington State. So it doesn't make any sense. It's going to be so screwy.
Yeah, that's the fun of the federal versus the state laws, isn't it?
Yeah, it's and it's such a shame, because all this does is it just injects a whole bunch of uncertainty and doubt and you know, fear into the society. I mean, I can completely understand that the feds and the states are kind of going at war with each other over this. And of course, you know, it's entirely executive branch driven here. I don't think the current leader of the United States is really that big of a marijuana enthusiast. So it's fascinating to watch this all play out. It sure is.
Yeah, well, all that Trump needs is someone to come in and whisper in his ear. He's like, hey, you know, if you actually make this legal federally and we generate a federal tax on it, you could decrease the deficit by 25% in 1 year. And you know what? He'd probably do that right about the year before he runs for re-election. Hey guys, I got the budget down 25%. I legalized marijuana. Watch how fast I'll be re-elected. I mean, I just think it's the
you notice that I said the leader of the executive branch, that I'm not even saying the guy's name anymore. It's just not even worth it. I have no comment. Good luck, United States of America. And it kind of sucks, because I used to live down in the States, and I would much rather, you know, when I was traveling to Europe, it was like no big deal. When I was going over the borders and stuff like that, nobody even really cared. All of a sudden, now the United States of America has become this police state. And it's interesting that we start the conversation off with this. So, you know, I have no comment. I love Vancouver, and I'm just more than happy to hang out here. And next summer, all you guys have to come here, so I'm not going anywhere. Anyway, on to further topics. It is interesting to see that the interest rates, I had guessed that interest rates are going to go down and that the yield curve was going to invert. And Brian basically got this call completely wrong.
You said interest rates were going down or up?
I got the impression, you see, back at the end of August, you can see on your chart there on your screen, rates were basically going down. And it looked like we were breaking down and put in an M there. That's your interest rates on your screen there. And all they've done since the middle of August is just go straight up and driving me crazy here. But anyway, that's the market for you.
Yeah, so this is important because that guy, Jeff, what's his name? Jeff Gundlach, who's coined kind of the bond king, he's predicted that 3% is kind of like the breakout point, that once that gets breached, that there's no turning back from that level. And he put that statement out kind of back here at the beginning of the summer, and that was rather the high in the market. He said that 3% was the high. Sorry, I got that mixed up. And it did come down quite precipitously after that, but we're back there. We're retesting these numbers again from August, so I think this is interesting. I follow him on Twitter. He's a really bright guy. He's twitter.com. I mean, I'll have to look for him, but you can find him pretty easily, and he comes out and makes some very profound statements. A lot of the Macro Voices guys like to reference him, and they try to get him on the show quite often, and I don't think he's been on there yet. I'd love to hear from him. If he has, I probably missed it. Where is this guy? There we go. Jeff at Truth Gundlach is the guy's name. So that's definitely an interesting guy to watch. I'm wondering if he's commenting on these 10 years, because that's like his bread and butter. And he said massive increase this week. So this is back in August. He hasn't commented this week, it looks like. His last tweet is the 10th. But I'd expect him to say something, and the market generally follows what he says. So be on the lookout for what he says about the 10-year and watch how the market responds to him. It's really fascinating how much of this is predicated on this guy. So keep a close eye watch on that, dude. So that's like your 10-year. That's always a good measurement. And then interestingly, today we had an up day in the stock market, and then Trump came out, and just with a single speech, the guy can erase all the gains. And that was from a tweet he sent out on Saturday that he was looking to increase tariffs on Chinese goods, and he specifically targeted Apple in his tweet and said that if they were to move their business to the United States, they wouldn't have as many taxes, but to prepare that if they keep things in China, things are going to get much more expensive, and it's going to be much more difficult for them to import their goods. So I'm interested to see how this affected Apple right now, because I think their stock was catching a bid after their keynote speech on Wednesday, and yesterday they were up, and today I think they're down. So it's interesting. We're actually back near the close of yesterday. The close of Wednesday. So after the speech, the stock went to about 221. Yesterday, it went up to like 226. So this thing's really bouncing around like a football. And the question is, what's the direction here? And I think if that actually stands, the Trump tariff is going to really put a dent in Apple's bottom line here. So you can see that blue line was our keynote speech. We were waiting for that. I never actually closed out my position. So I'm still holding this because, I was supposed to sell half on a double. I didn't get there. My stop didn't get hit either. I actually took off my stop to break in profits because I just want to keep myself in this position. And, if this thing goes too far against me, my stop will get triggered on my puts here. But you can see that we're kind of filling in gaps, things that have been left behind on the way down. And this tried to pop up here. But today's a down day. We're riding the 13 EMA again. And I think this thing is setting up real well. Yesterday was probably a good shot to get back in on these puts. I guess I wasn't around to talk about that yesterday, but I didn't add to my position.
Chart, I mean, I apologize, but I just got to say, fuck. Guy like Joshua, this is his bread and butter.
Hopefully Could you drive a plane through there?
I mean, look at that. I mean, that's just so textbook. It's talk about a goddamn level, eh? Jesus.
Yeah, so that's my level.
And looking at your chart, I look at MACD, and it looks like an absolute train wreck.
Yeah, this is a classic Thomas trade, really. You got your divergence here. You've got the beginnings of market structure. If this breaks below here, I think this one's, you can put a fork in this one down to about the 200, 190 area. And that'll give me my triple on my puts. So I'm looking for double. I'll sell half on a double, and I'll ride it out for a triple is my plan here going forward. I said the other day I didn't have a plan going. I just wanted to comment on that. There is something in place for a plan-wise.
Sorry, say that again. Sorry.
Well, I was just mentioning that on Wednesday I didn't have a plan for selling because I was looking to sell half on a double, and I didn't quite get there. So I was kind of lost that it didn't hit my sell, and that I had my stops in place, and now, I just wanted to be very kind of transparent on what my position is here because, I got to be held to a pretty high standard here, right? I'm the one here telling my positions, and got to follow the plan, right? Eat my own medicine, of course. And I think this one's just really nice looking, and a double for me will be probably around the 210 area, and then a triple will bring me down to this area, down in this gap fill. So that's my plan going forward.
I thought it was just interesting. We commented yesterday about the NASDAQ. Look how it just rallied right up into good old Mr. Mountain Man and just got rejected here this morning. Yeah. And you're an American, so you know how to comment on this. What was the fallout of the latest political thing this morning? One of Trump's insider guys is cooperating with the feds with Mueller now.
Yeah. I think that this is just a show, right? So really, I don't really care about any of these headlines until articles of impeachment are brought forward. And if there are no articles of impeachment, this is just a news story. I mean, I've been kind of hanging out with 50 and 60-year-old dudes this week, and they love keeping their CNN on. And the only thing CNN is on about is just impeach Trump, Trump's the worst, yada, yada, yada. And really, I mean, should we care about any of this stuff other than it just making news headlines? I don't think so, unless there's articles of impeachment brought forward. I mean, this is just a show, and you don't really know what the fiction or what the storyline that they're creating here to set up for whether it's the midterms, whether it's for his reelection. I mean, I just don't want to put too much credence into whatever's going on. So, I mean, it's exciting and it's different, but it's just, that's all it is. Until there are articles of impeachment, I can't really do it. There's nothing to do.
Fair enough. I would much rather just ask an American about that rather than me go on about it. So if anything, I think that's cool. So sorry I asked you.
That's okay.
All right. I have to say that I did get my trigger on my gold stock. I was watching American Barrick yesterday put in my inverted empire signal. So I did go and pull the trigger, and I bought a few springtime calls on the gold. I thought it was interesting, like I said just a moment ago, how the euro and crypto seem to be highly correlated. What are you thinking about your good old U.S. dollar and where the hell's that damn chart? The U.S. dollar and the gold in your eyes now? What are you seeing?
Well, it's interesting, right? So from Wednesday, we were here, and I was saying, if this closes where it's at, this is kind of a clothesline confirmation of a market structure top, even though, this is messy, this is kind of messy, but I think I'm leaning more to the point that this is the area that needs to be broken below, and that'll confirm this big market structure top. For now, this is just kind of in a range and that's where we're bottoming right now. But it's interesting, the market's catching a bid off of these lows. So someone's buying through this period here. And I think that's the area of defense. It's actually functioned quite well, even through the past. So I need a definitive close under, let's call it 94 and a quarter, or 94.40, let's call it. And a close below that level will instigate a bearish scenario for gold, for the dollar, and a bullish scenario for gold. Now, here's the problem that I have with this, and that this market is mega phony, and I talked about that the other day, and that I see Willie as oversold at this point. So any further downside to me is limited, and unless we get that really strong push downward, we're just setting ourselves up for a bullish divergence and a continuation of this megaphone. So I think this is range bound. Whether that range is from 93 up to 97, or whether that range is from 94 on up, I think that's for the market to let us know. But I mean, a megaphone market is really shitty to trade, because unless you're day trading in and out of setups every few hours and not holding a position through a week, you're not gonna be doing too well on trades like this. And I think that we're seeing that reflected in gold. Gold is again stuck to being the dollar slave. So that's my feeling on the dollar. If we do rally off these levels, it doesn't put in that MACD divergence, because the market is in convergence. And we could just rally back up here, maybe make another megaphone. It's just sideways for now, to me. And there's nothing to do, right? So I don't, it's really hard. Here's the other thing, like speaking to you all as traders, like as a person who wants to make money trading the dollar, it's hard, right? So I don't have any good proxies. I definitely don't trade Forex because I freaking hate it. I think that it's all rigged and it's all BS. And the other way of playing it is through these ETFs. And there's this bullish ETF, but I mean, what am I going to do? Buy this thing at, $25 and sell it at $25.50? I mean, I don't want to put out that much capital to make this small amount of money. It just doesn't, it's not worth it for me. So the only thing that I'm using the dollar for is a proxy into playing gold and silver. And, I was talking about silver calls the other day, And I mean, these things still haven't put in that market structure bottom. This kind of did, but we opened up today below the market, and that's not a good sign. So while this is a bullish divergence, if it can confirm, that's probably how I'll play this if the dollar looks bullish and if the dollar looks bearish and resolves itself bearishly, I'll play silver calls. But to me, there's nothing to do. So that's how I would sum up what I just blabbered about for the last couple of minutes. Is there's sideways to no trade on the table.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right, so I think and I don't know, are you interested in any junior stocks right now? Is any of that appealing to you in the market? We had another VCIM name pop up. I was going through my old VCIM list. Hey, James, do you remember this one from back in the day? ABM, Athabasca Minerals. Anyway, this was one of our VCIMers, so I'm going to be going and throwing a bid in. You can see the very noticeable gap. I'm not going to chase this yet, but hopefully you guys can see the noticeable gap down here at 17. And what's interesting is if you drill out to a weekly chart, you can also see the gap there sitting at 18. I'm going to throw in a bid to add to my uranium play. Let me look at that chart. Hey, damn. Down here at the bottom, and hopefully I get filled with some sort of pullback energy. Are we sharing the right screen there?
Yeah, totally. We just had somebody come up that there's some background noise with Thomas, but Bugger muted him.
Yeah, Bugger actually helped. Thanks, Bugger. I appreciate that. Just a heads up, here is another name in the venture cap space that I'm interested. Are you looking at any junior stocks these days, Thomas?
Sorry, I got to switch on and off my mute. I've got some conversations going on in the background. Sorry about that.
That's all right. And if you want to be limited today, I can fully understand that.
No, it's fine. There's just guys talking about gold and what they're planning on doing with it. So, I mean, if you can hear their conversation, it's like being a fly on the wall here. It's interesting to hear what people are saying. But as far as junior names, I mean, there's nothing that I'm particularly interested in right now. I think that's the issue right now is the market's trying to resolve not only the post-Labor Day back to work situation, but it's also trying to figure out what does Trump want to do with his tariffs. And once that resolves itself, I think we can get directions on many of these names. So I think we're in transition right now. I went through the FANG stocks and commented on those. I don't think there's anything particularly interesting, so I won't spend too much time there.
All right, I was just wondering whether you had any pharma names that were jumping up on you that you were interested in. That's all. Like those little junior ones that you like to buy. So that's okay. It's all good. All right, my bids on DPW still waiting there. On iMining blockchain, you can see I'm still waiting there. On my uranium, now I'm going to have two bids working on uranium stocks. They're U308. My bid's going to be down to the gaps, and now, like I said, I'm going to add a bid on this Athabasca Minerals. You can see our Denison trades working pretty nicely there. And as you can see, actually, even my inverted empire, I'm even up a little bit on the trade right now on the American Barrick call option. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so I guess we'll probably leave the stock market at that for today. Let's head on over to and talk crypto. Oh, bye.
Tastes great.
Was that Kevin? Kevin, are you singing now? That's awesome. Anyway, Biomira. Did you want to talk a little about Biomira there, or shall we head on over to Bitcoin?
Yeah, let's do crypto.
What's that?
Let's go to crypto.
All right. So, once upon a time in a land far, far away, we had a nice little sort of dead cat bounce that developed overnight out of Ethereum. I was talking yesterday in this show that I was not overly. I didn't want to see a rip-roaring rally out of Ethereum yesterday, and yet that's what we got. And so now, as a result, like I was kind of hoping we might put in a nice little inverted empire. I don't know whether I can call that an empire. It's awfully tilted. If anything, this almost looks to me too far too fast. You can see we ran into 38.2 and have stalled here. But this does set up a really interesting battle on Ethereum down here at the reload zone, these candle body lows. So I'm going to be watching this closely over the next few days. And ironically enough, I think actually the Ethereum story is probably more of a driver right now than Bitcoin. But what are you seeing in the market? Mr.
Well, I guess the first thing I should talk about is what you brought up in the beginning of the show, is that Mike Novogratz is calling a bottom. And he's kind of jumped the gun a few times, just like, what's that guy's name out of the fund strat guy, Tom Lee. You know, Tom Lee's been caught off balance a few times. I think that Mike he's getting a little ants in his pants, right? That's really what this is coming down to, is people are getting sick and tired of this bear market, and a little bit of a jump gets you excited. I mean, I won't lie. The last few times we've bounced, I get excited because it freaking sucks to be in this bear market. Now, Mike is referencing this Bloomberg Galaxy Crypto Index for the reason for his bottom. Now, anyone in our community will look at this and go, what kind of market structure are we coming off of? That to me looks very much like a very messy M. Now, does anyone see a W down here? Because I mean, from what I learned in school, this looks like a V. That's not a W. That's the first part of the W. I think Mike's jumping the gun here. And the thing that really bothers me is, while we got pushed down here on his crypto index, if this is a classic test the neckline of the breakdown, that's all this really is here. Now, we're going to go in and analyze these markets here and see what they're looking like. But to me, just using his data, I don't know what he's looking at. You know, he's got his own set, and he trades differently than I guess we do here. So, I mean, you can call a bottom all you want, Mr. Novogratz, but you don't really need to do that. I don't know why you need to put your neck out like that. Maybe he's trying to raise money here, but it's, you know, why? That's all I have to ask him. What do you get from this? You know, we all learn not to call bottoms because it really jeopardizes your career, but he's putting his neck out, so we'll see what happens. So I think the first thing we should do is probably look at Bitcoin on a daily chart, because the interesting thing is that we were putting in what seemed like this giant M here, or W. This, you know, you had this breakout, we came back down, and if you want to imagine that this is one giant potential W that can form, well, that would certainly be a nice treat to see on the market here. But we're early, and the fact is that we have rallied off of 78.6, so that's also encouraging. Yesterday's bounce was nice. Now, as far as any kind of divergences, there's nothing really working, right? Because we didn't make new lows here. We are trying to form solid bottoms, so that's good. We haven't breached this area yet. We haven't broken down to 5,000. Now, could this thing just roll over and put in a big M again? Yeah, it could. But if we go back in time and look at the last few times we've rallied, it's been pretty quick, right? If we go back to our April rally, this thing had a quick dip down that was in the liquidation phase, and then a quick W that formed, came back down, tested these lows, and then broke below. This market action seems a little bit different than it did in the past. Now, we are testing some of these moving average crosses on the daily, so that to me needs to be resolved before I get very bullish. Today's action doesn't look so encouraging. I think that in terms of trading, if you were buying off these lows, I would probably be looking to reevaluate my situation as this market goes forward, right? This is very much a, do we put in an M, or do we come back down, test these bottoms, and kind of break from there? Because these two lines here.
The worst part about all this is that literally right at this level, CNBC comes out with a big buy recommendation. It's like,
that's
these sons of bitches. Like I might even argue they literally put the kibosh on this rally, fuckers.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that these support and resistance lines that I've had drawn, this orange line is back from in the middle of July, and the market's pivoted around that area for a while. And then this red line that I've drawn was the original breakout, which happened in June. So I think the market's kind of stuck between these two areas right now. And that blue line's kind of like the last stand. So this has been my trading range for a while. And as the market breaks below that area, I'm generally trying to buy. So that was, you know, and that makes sense, right? That was location. So let's go to 4 hour and see how that looks, because I mean, the daily, you either bought that 78.6 tag and you're happy right now, or you're too late to the party from a daily point of view. Now, the 4 hour to me, just on first glance, looks very washy. Here's that sideways action we saw. This is kind of coming back down and trying to test this neckline here. So if you are a bull and you're looking to get bullish setups, you really had to buy over the last few candles and the last few pullbacks to continue that bullish momentum. I will admit that I am leaning bullish here going forward, and I'm going to draw fibs because I think that, you know, buying from 78.6, you're really looking for more of an aggressive, not aggressive, but more of an optimistic target. I think that this bullish divergence that came in, which is very, very weird looking, is active in the market, and that's what's driving us here higher. We are at 38.2, and this is exactly how you see the market behave. I mean, this is just, you know, day in and day out, 38.2 tag. Is it going to reverse or is it going to go higher? I'm leaning toward that bullish perspective. I'm looking for a move back up into these highs here eventually. Now, the problem here, and I guess we have to comment, is that that new quarterly contract did come online. And it's no surprise to me that into that event, people were trying to position themselves long, not into that contract, but just in the other markets. And I think that's just a pure contract play. Now, as far as positioning is going forward, I think that people are trying to get long on that quarterly position. You can see that there's some defense. People are trying to keep it from pushing too high and getting away from them. So if I were an OKCoin trader, which I am, and if I were trying to position myself for 3 months, which I don't normally do, I would be looking to buy in this area, that 78.6 tag. I'd be looking for maybe a nice 3 month, maybe try to get up higher into, you know, above this area here, maybe even the 8,000 to 9,000 area. It's very, very early to be calling for something like that. But I think if I'm a 3 month long trader, that's what I have to be playing for. And right now, since this market has taken off into the start of that contract, my belief is that the market will come back down into this level, give people the ability to re-add to their position, and then see the market continue higher. Now, of course, that could all change depending on, you know, stop levels and where the market wants to move itself. But that's how I would position myself here. So that's my thought, right? I'm going to be adding around here, and even the 4 hour kind of gives me credence because it's continued its bullish momentum trade. So that's encouraging too. And for all I know, this may not come back down into this level, just continue up to 78.6, and then, you know, you've got 78.6 ping pong. So those are the scenarios that I'm seeing now. As far as you're a day trader and you kind of want to trade for the next 6 to 8 hours, I'm going to have to say that I'm leaning more toward taking a short into a bounce back up into here. So that's what I would do. I'm not day trading today. I don't have enough going on, or I have too much going on to be able to day trade. But if I were, my levels would be to short about 6,500 to, call it, 6,500. And I'm looking for a move back down to these lows. And it is weekend trading now after the close here. So, and of course, we are coming off of this bearish divergence. This has certainly continued itself. I think that whichever way this wants to resolve, right now we're going to test the bottom of this neckline up here, the 6,500 area. And then if we can hold this original breakout of this W, then I'd say we'd continue higher if this doesn't initially blast off. So I think we're going to be given a very good story here, which will let us know which way this market wants to go, just because of the way it's setting itself up. So again, I'll reiterate that I would short going from 6,500, and I would unfortunately have to set my stop above 65.75 as my stop. And then my target's probably going to be $200 down to here, and that's around 63.85. I may leave a portion on the table if I took the position and risk back down to about 6,300 and change, you could draw your fibs here. I would be more in favor of a Mountain Man tag more so than a 78.6 tag. So Mountain Man's about 62.25, maybe a little higher than that. There's a nice gap in there. Those would be my levels going forward. So I think for the weekend, we've got some ranges in play, and there should be a way to profit on this on leverage. So I'd be all on, I'm going to be on top of this probably tomorrow and Sunday, less so than today, which is unfortunate because I think this setup is kind of valid for today. So keep that in mind and use that for whatever it's worth. Brian, do you want to chime in on Bitcoin before I go into Ethereum here?
Yeah, I put out a tweet yesterday saying that it kind of bummed me out to see CNBC come out, and actually I'm a little disappointed in CNBC that they didn't have any reference at all to this new contract listing. And yeah, maybe you can throw yourself on mute while I'm chatting. Thanks, bud. And I think this was the contract listing event. If anything, guys, this is such a great testament to why the prop firms would excuse me, would run around as we were heading into a fundamental event and freak out if you had open positions on. Because I think this is what happened through that new contract listing. Was there a specific time that happened? Because I have it happening at 1 o'clock. But did the new contract come out at like midnight? I'm not quite sure. But nonetheless, this is exactly what we talk about when you have big 4 a.m. Eastern time. So that's 1 o'clock my time. So that's right there. So they initially knee-jerked it up and then just slammed it back down. And if anything, such a great testament to why it's probably best if you're quote-unquote trading, that when you have these new fundamental events happen, maybe best just to leave it alone and let the dust settle. And, a lot of people that were like, rah, CNBC's calling bull, go long, right? They just got their head handed to them. I don't know whether I can really add much to the equation. I mean, we did have this really interesting swing trade. And there is that double bottom that we sort of talked about in yesterday's daily brief. And I actually also think that this was an LJ, trend line break, 3 tags of a trend line break with market structure supporting the trade. And I'm also really liking, Graham actually was the one who sort of first brought this to my attention. And I've just been sort of mulling it over. But I actually do like the idea of applying the bot trade management rules even to things like L-tangonators and stuff. So I'm probably going to be reporting more about this going forward, how we can sort of use this, because quite often, there's an old adage in the market, we should never let winners turn into losers. Here's probably a good example where, yeah, there is your 50% level target up there, but you don't want this thing to come back and turn into a loser after a really nice win. Did you get stopped out on, if you see move stop to trailing, did you maybe just move your stops up to recent support? Are you going to use this as your stop now? I don't know, but anybody who did take this long, I would be really disappointed if I heard that you actually lost money on this trade. At the very worst, probably best that you just walk away at scratch. It's still working in my opinion. And if anything, you can see the fractal here. This is a 4-hour Phoenix chart, so it's massive. The fractal here fires. We'll get actually the sell signal outright if we lose this low here, and that's 63.5520 there. So on balance, and I kind of have to agree with the bear. I am still pointing higher here. I don't see, we spent a long time consolidating and going through this phase. And I even made reference in yesterday's daily brief to how Thomas even pointed out he was very interested when he watched these tails coming down into this original bottom and get rejected. And then we had this cute little double bottom, cute little fractal that fired in here. So I think there were lots of reasons for us to be thinking uppy here. And just simply going to risk against these lows. You never know what's going to happen in trading, but you can see how that strategy basically paid off. Are you still in the long trade? I kind of think, just as Mr. Bear said, you're reassessing right now. I don't know whether you necessarily needed to panic on that OKCoin new contract listing event, but no doubt about it, that was a big fundamental driver that sort of shook the market up a little bit. And then the last thing I would say is, of course, we're heading into weekend trade. So really, at this point, what I'm asking is, and I would highly suggest all of you do this. Coinigy, for those people that use Coinigy, but I'm not quite sure what's going on here. Coinigy has their latest system up and running. I guess their next version. So if you want to, they have a beta test, so you can send them an email or whatever. If you would like to participate in their beta, maybe. Now what's happening? Oh, okay. All right. That's interesting. I wasn't expecting that. Did I lose my beautiful weekly chart? Nope, there it is. Good. Phew. What I'm going to be watching through the weekend is how we resolve this. This is a really interesting trendline battle that's going on right now here. You can see how the market tried to accept above this trend line, but got rejected back down. And again, we tried to accept above the trend line, got rejected back down. So this actually becomes a really important weekly close here. If we can just quietly sneak out through the weekend and print a nice little inside bar here on the other side of this trend line, then this becomes like a weekly LJ setup right there. You see the nice little W that'll come in on the other side of this trend line, and the trend line's been tagged once, twice, 3 times. So really, really important pivot point here, and maybe Mr. Novogratz is right. Maybe this is the bottom. I think it's not a really good idea to assume, what assuming does to all of us. I don't think it's a good idea to assume that this bottom is in. And really, what's the difference? I mean, really, hell, we were all watching $18,000, $19,000 of Bitcoin. Here we are at 6,500. We can get up to 7,400 and print a nice, weekly close about there. What's $900 between friends. If we can do that, then I think that there's probably, $1,000, $2,000 to be made on the upside. So I'm not going to be, like front running this and declaring bottoms. I'm more than happy to hunt trade setups off of, like OKCoin, BitMEX, that kind of stuff off lower time frames. But if we can, first off, let's watch how the weekend trade goes. Who knows what they'll do over the weekend. Saturday, Sunday, this thing might just crap right out. But if we can somehow just sort of slide out here, and then Sunday evening, Monday morning, print a nice inside candle here, then I think we've got a shot here. And as Thomas has been saying, he drew his horizontal lines. I've been sort of suggesting quite a while. I can completely understand professional traders are going to take their long shots down here. It makes perfect sense. No guarantees, of course. And if we lose these lows, then those guys better hop off those positions. But I can understand that, we're very close to potentially turning the corner here. All right, so that's sort of my thoughts on Bitcoin right at the moment. Do we want to talk good old Ethereum? And you are muted, so there you go.
Yeah, let's do some Ethereum. The very first thing we need to do is check our handy-dandy Ethereum Bitcoin chart. And what do we have here? Nothing more than another V bottom and 13 EMA tag. No bull div, just potential. It's looking exciting, but it's just a bounce. I can't say that I would be interested in calling a bottom here, just from this chart. So now if we do go back down, which I believe we probably will, and I hope we do because we don't want to leave V bottoms behind, but if we do go back down here, test these lows, and you don't see us break below them with any consistent candle bodies in there, then I'll say, well, you know what? Starting to look good. Now, from a weekly perspective, I mean, I really probably shouldn't even bother with this thing, but it is interesting that we are coming into a level that has been defended in the past, and that was as Bitcoin was rallying up to 20,000. somebody stepped up, or I guess this is just a function of that relationship here. But from an algorithmic perspective, if I were an algorithm and I was programmed to buy against previous areas, that is exactly where I would be stepping up. Now, the problem being, this would make another big M, so we have to keep our eyes on that. Now, as far as the US dollar price, I think it's kind of the same setup here as it would be on Bitcoin, at least on the hourly chart. Now, let's take a look at the daily here. This very much looks similar to the Ethereum Bitcoin proxy, where we are tagging 13 EMA. We've bounced. That's generally what you see when the market has come down heavily. It'll kind of just spring back up, and we all know what that is. It's nothing more than a dead cat bounce unless we can resolve our 38.2, which I believe we are pretty close to, if not already there, if I reverse these fibs. And we just have to see which direction the market's going. I really don't think that it's ready to launch here, especially going into weekend trading and new contracts. You know, it's not just the Bitcoin contract that rolled over. It's also every other contract that's traded on OKCoin. Now, if we do want to add sort of...
That's a really good point. So I think over the weekend, I'm going to take a look at how those traded through their rollovers as well. That's a really good point that you make there.
Yeah. The other interesting thing here is that this is being picked up by some of the crypto news outlets, is that Ether had its highest daily trading volume in 12 months on Finex. For whatever that's worth. I don't know if they're recording the data right. I don't know if this is a function of those bots. I mean, who the hell knows? But it's interesting to see nonetheless that maybe someone stepped up here and said, you know what, enough is enough. $170, $165 is stupid. I'll buy it and probably make 20% on a cash buy, right? So we're at 164. If you want to make 20 bucks, it's $32 to the upside. And they were probably making 30% at this point. So that made sense. But the question is, where do we go from here? And we've got to take a look at what's going on the internals. You can see here that shorts haven't been able to make new highs. Longs have come off just a little bit, but they are still inching higher. So it's kind of the market deciding what it wants to do. It is nice to see the buy volume, but it's just one piece of the puzzle here. So as far as daily setups, I wouldn't be going long-term on here. 4 hour, I mean, again, same thing as Bitcoin. I'd be buying against those lows here on the 4 hour. This to me looks like it is just a 38.2 test, and you can see that market structure that's trying to come in here really is approaching overbought. And as this market works its way higher, I would assume that somewhere through the weekend, if we don't make new highs, that we will go back down and retest this area. That's what we want to see. We want to see those retests. You got to take your shot. I mean, I got to take my shots down there, set my stops relatively close to this bottom. And if that is where the market wants to bottom, and Mr. Novogratz is right, we'll be positioned quite nicely for the quarter as that 3-month contract approaches expiration in December.
If you could draw a horizontal ray off of that, you see that pin bar, looks like it's maybe on the 10th, that low, and then there's also another low. It looks like it's maybe the 7th or 8th. You can see how
you're talking on this one?
Yeah, that low right in there. It'd be interesting to do fibs off of those levels and see if they line up with fibs. Because you see the institutional fingerprint, right? The bar that made the low plus the preceding bar.
Yeah.
You can see where the bottom has been put in, and it's right in that zone. I got a funny feeling that that's probably, if you do want to be a buyer and you want to take a shot on the long side against this thing, that's kind of where I think a smart trader is probably going to be working some bids.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, right in that zone there.
Yeah, that's like your reload zone. So that would be where I'd want to see the market reverse off of.
And
so
it looks to me like this is a total 38.2 ping pong match right now.
Yeah. Who's winning, the cat or the cat?
I don't know. Who's got that Clint Eastwood Clint Eastwood meme where everybody's looking at each other? I love that one. Who's gonna blink first?
Yeah, it's really fascinating to see this market right now. I mean, this hourly candle is retesting the underside of this M. This W came in here. So, I mean, the market's fighting as hard as it can for its bullish scenario, but we'll see who wins here, right?
That big down candle there with that huge wick, is that the new contract listing candle?
It is.
Yeah, so they, we looked at that Bitcoin chart and wow, did that ever look screwy through that contract listing? I bet if you pulled up like a 5-10 minute chart, there's probably a lot of unfinished business up in that wick up there.
Yeah, I'm more of a 15-minute guy. Let's see if that looks any good. This is pretty tight, right? This is the 4 o'clock listing, and they pushed it lower, 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 and then put it in through, I guess this is almost end of London kill zone, 10 o'clock in the morning, and kind of W'd here. But someone's going to be defending this area who came in short on that contract, and that's kind of why I like taking this short here. And maybe it's just a purely new contract play. I know there's a couple of strategies that I've used into contract rollovers, but Mr. Bear's getting sick and tired of staying up until 4 o'clock in the morning when he's on the East Coast, because it doesn't lend well to working on East Coast time the next morning. So I didn't play this one. And really it's, what am I missing? 218 down to 200 is probably like 150%. Who needs 150% profit? Give me a break. I'm just kidding. I really feel bad I missed that. But it is what it is. I think I've got another setup coming in here. If this does close here, I think this is a very strong signal that whoever knocked the market down here is still active and they are still willing to defend that area. If this tail or this wick up here, if the market makes a new high since then, I think that he was purely a play into the overnight hours just to get his 150% profit. But I really want to strap on a short now. I really like the way this looks for a short going forward, but I don't know if I can do that while I'm doing other stuff. So if this market does close here, I really like that position going forward into the weekend. So that's a little insight into what I'd be doing. Hopefully that makes some sense. You can see that, a nice 38.2 play is $200, and we didn't quite tag that on the downside. It was interesting to see that this level here was more of what the market was paying attention to. So if we do end up, topping out here, I think that there's much more downside to go on a leverage position, which will pay handsomely. And this is kind of my bread and butter.
Yeah, if we lose this double bottom here off that 38.2, she's toast.
Yeah, so keep that in mind going forward.
Yeah. And just for the record, this is the GIF that we were all talking about. Everybody's doing a 38.2 standoff right now.
It is interesting to see Litecoin, the leader here, is making new highs from the not quite from the
money's pouring in here. Hey, wow, look at the size of that bloody wick. Jesus.
Yeah, longs are coming in. This is interesting. This bearish divergence is continuing itself, so I'm a little hesitant here, but I mean, you got to use the past performance to dictate how you plan your future trades here. And
we'll go down to 15-minute on that thing. Let's see what that top looks like. Wow, look at this contract screwy. Hey, this one, it opened up. They actually took it down into the expiry and then launched it higher. So it's exact opposite to Bitcoin and Ethereum, eh? Isn't that interesting? Huh. Some funny business going on with Mr. Charlie's coin. So, yeah, very interesting. So, if anything, watch these, the wicks. You see Ethereum's come into this wick, Litecoin's into this wick. If she just politely puts in an inside bar here, then I think we crap out on these things. But right now, let's keep a close eye on how these wicks are respected here. Really good information, especially all you day traders. All you day traders, this is exactly the, especially as Ethereum chart, this thing, and you even heard Thomas going, I'm getting really interested in here. All you day traders, you got to be looking at that top going, okay, they brought the market right back up into the top. And if I'm going to short against highs and buy against lows, well, I got to step up and start seriously paying attention here. You don't necessarily need to hit that. You could just maybe wait for a nice little polite inside bar or something to help you. But I definitely understand. And of course, this is difficult. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is easy. But I could, kind of like our conversation about, Bitcoin traders are buying against the lows. Just for the day traders, we're coming up into some really interesting levels here. Good stuff, Thomas. As always, good stuff. All right, so we've talked a little Bitcoin, we've talked a little Ethereum, we've talked a little Litecoin. It is the top of the hour. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the equation? Any of the other little ones, sort of the medium-term ones, any of them got your attention here, or you just sort of sit?
No, and I hate saying this because it's just makes me feel like shit. But I mean, a lot of these altcoins, I'm just hands off here. I don't think that. I think we'll get our altcoin cycle, but I think it's going to be different than what it was before. And I'm very hesitant to kind of commit to any of these names at this point until we see Ethereum decide to put in their bottoms. And, I just don't see my way into the altcoin market just yet. And that's probably why you haven't heard me covering any of the alt names. I do have a couple stories that are interesting, and this is just an SEC shuts down TokenLot, which was a United States-based ICO. So no surprises as far as ICOs being shut down here in the US. It just, if anyone out there does have an ICO and you are US-based, I think it's time to move abroad. Just, SEC does like that low-hanging fruit. So that's just something that I wanted to mention here, that they are still looking for these ICOs. And I think that many of these names, if they're not based abroad, which most of them already are, the big money still got their eyes on how regulation is going to function throughout much of the world and how most of these countries are going to treat them. Now, another article that I'll quickly move to is Vitalik came out, and I think he mentioned Zcash. I just skimmed this article pretty quickly, but it's interesting to see him mentioning other names like EOS, which he specifically says he's not in favor of. He talks about Zcash, and I think he's in favor of it. I think he likes it. So it's just fascinating to see him all over the place and how he can move.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I got the Zcash chart up here, and I see the most beautiful inverted empire here. I'm actually tempted to just go and grab some of this today. I really like the look of this. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that he actually thought favorably of this story.
Yeah, so that's one to watch, just because he's going to generate hype, just kind of like McAfee used to as well.
Yeah. Well, I definitely say that Buterin definitely has much more credibility in this space than a guy like McAfee. So.
Yeah, if you were to make a range of the spectrum, whereas Vitalik would be the higher end of the let's take him seriously, and Mr. McAfee would probably be on the far left end of that spectrum.
And the question is, do you hang to the left or do you hang to the right? And that's another conversation altogether.
Well, speaking of, I think that he's going to have to eat whatever.
Yeah, I know. The odds are not looking good for him right now. I'll tell you that much.
I think someone called him out, and they're asking him how he plans on preparing his dish.
Oh God! Do you guys remember a movie? There was a movie called The Thief, The Cook. Jesus, that was a movie from the late 80s. Man, that was a crazy movie. Anyway, speaking of which, you'll have to watch the movie to understand the reference. I can't remember what it's called. Some really weird movie. Anyway, back in the late 80s. The Thief and the Cook and the Housewife or something like that. Do you remember that movie, Albert? It was a really weird movie. Anyway. Okay, the only thing that I thought I'd mention, and we got to get used to it, that is venture capital. And frankly speaking, I was a little surprised at this. But it turns out that we're now getting, and if anything, this might also be another anecdote of sort of the bottom. We're actually getting a lot of, well, not a lot of, this is the first time I've seen this, but we're getting coins actually saying that they're planning on shutting down. And I think that this is probably to be expected. And, Thomas was even kind of like, you know what, I'm going to cool it on altcoins until I start seeing some serious bottoms in these bigger names. So I woke up this morning and I saw quite a few people were quite up in arms about this CoFoundIt. And the research that I did very tentatively was just simply the team at CoFoundIt reviewed sort of what their options were. And if I understand it correctly, these guys really wanted to be sort of that crowdfunding kind of source. And of course, with the market going absolutely crazy last year, this whole crowdfunding model has been brought into question. I was very curious about this, though. If I understand correctly, they've decided that they're going to shut the coin down and they're going to refund whatever balance they have back to token holders. So interestingly enough, I actually think that, and if I understand correctly, if you look at their balance, they're actually they have a lot of cash, don't they? I don't think they have a lot of cash. I think they have a lot of ether. They're sitting on a whole shitload of ETH, but don't quote me specifically on that. But from what I understand, they're going to wind down basically the operation. And from what I understand, trading has basically been halted. It's kind of a shame because it's a really good looking chart and everything looked like it was rocking and rolling here. But maybe the market sort of found out about this sort of news that they were going to dump it. And this might be one of the reasons why that Ethereum actually is rallying here, is that gee whiz, maybe the street thought that, well, these guys were going to dump all their Ethereum kind of idea. And then the rumor goes out that, oh, well, actually, they're just going to return the Ethereum to the original token holders of CoFoundIt. So, an excellent analogy of venture capital and the venture capital space. Keep in mind, guys, this is high risk stuff. We're not buying blue chip shit here, people. Please understand that. That's why, little old ladies, nanny nibbles, kind of stuff like that. So I'm not quite sure how this story is going to ultimately play out. From what I understand, they have a premium in ETH and on their balance sheet relative to where the price is in the marketplace at the moment. Those people that were able to sneak in off the lows here, you might actually make money on this deal. I don't know what's going to happen. But I definitely think, new ideas, new purchases, that kind of stuff, absolutely off the table now on this thing. And there's people that do own it. I own about, I think it's 0.6 BTC or 0.06 BTC worth of this. Not a hell of a lot. We're just going to have to watch how this plays out and basically roll with the punches. But just welcome to venture capital, guys. This is part of the territory. This is why I don't put too much money into any one play, because you just don't know what the ultimate outcome of these stories are. And I just wanted to mention this. I wanted to comment about this. Albert here has put in some posts in the lounge here. He says, it seems it's from their blog post. I guess the numbers that they say, they have assets of 14 million and liabilities of about 350,000. And I suppose the assets, that 14 million, a big chunk of that is actual ETH tokens. So, if ETH goes to zero, then maybe their asset base goes to zero. Ethereum catching a bid here. Maybe we found a floor. Who knows? Obviously that money is still out there. So, but he said, Albert just says here, seems some of it is indeed in digital assets, so it can go up and down. Like CoFoundIt holds different types of assets, including several types of digital assets and a significant amount of fiat. So, I with the trading itself being halted by the exchange, I don't even think you can trade it on the exchanges right now. We're just going to have to roll with the punches, guys, here and just play this out day by day. The interesting thing about the sort of tone that I got from these guys is that they kind of just want to wind the books up in a very professional manner. So I don't think it's just going off the board. But we're just, as professional speculators in the marketplace, we're just going to have to roll with the punches and see how this thing plays out. So I just wanted to mention that. On balance, I can see that alts have got a bit of a bid in the market right now, so that's encouraging. And like I said, there are actual some candle patterns here that actually have me very interested in maybe even going in and throwing in some bids here to pick some of this up. But if I did go and buy this, and you might see this on the site, I'll be risking to a break of these lows. And just like the OMG, if I get blown out, I get blown out. It's just a trader's life. Okay. I think we basically covered everything I think we wanted to talk about. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we missed here today, Thomas? Or do you feel like you're good to go?
Sorry, I've strapped on that Ethereum short.
So Thomas is busy trading. Can't talk trading. All right. So I get the impression Thomas is done for the day. Alex, is there anything on your mind that you wanted to bring to the community's attention before we bid them a fond adieu?
No, I think I'm looking forward to the broiler chicken show on Sunday, and happy trading over the weekend.
Okay. Well, speaking of which, it is the weekend market, so let's be cognizant of that. But we do have the new school term starting up this weekend. Rah, rah, rah. Sjord, Julian, and I have been running around like chickens without heads here over the past couple of days trying to wrangle all you cats. I think we have everybody in order, but please, anybody who's watching this, if you haven't received the email invitations, but you did register. Now, I noticed that the pace of sort of inquiries from you guys has backed off quite a bit. I only got about 2 or 3 emails and PMs yesterday. So I think we've got everybody covered. But please, if you're watching this and you're like, okay, I didn't get my invite, what's going on here? Just reach out to me to make sure that you're all tickety-boo. And anybody who's in the level 2 program, just make darn sure that you're in the chat room for 11 o'clock a.m. Pacific time for tomorrow. And as long as you're in the chat room, that's over here on the Rocket Chat. If we just pop on over here to our Q4, or where are we here? Level 2 Q4. Here we are. Just pop in. You can see everybody's making themselves nice and comfortable. Just pop in here and make sure that you can access this for 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. I think tomorrow's Saturday, right? Yep, tomorrow's Saturday. So other than that, I think I'm done for the day. Thank you so much, Mr. Bear. Brilliant stuff as always. Always bringing it. Thank you so much. Such a great treat for all of us to get to listen to you. Thank you, Alex, for doing an awesome job as always. And thank you, everybody, for participating. And other than that, I think the only thing left to say is bye for now.